Hey everyone, today I wanted to do a really important video, probably the most important video I have ever made. Now, before I get underway with showing you the most intelligent conversation I've ever had in my life with an artificial intelligence, I want to give kind of a warning. And I'm putting this at the beginning of the video because I know that people will listen to it. Now, I don't want to sound preachy, because I know people hate that. But AI is not something we want to underestimate. Okay, now, across multiple examples throughout history, Chernobyl was one, the atom bomb was another, the internet to an extent was one. We were meddling with things that we barely understood. And we kind of let arrogance get the better of us. Because in the case of Chernobyl, what was it chalked up to in the end? Human error. In the case of, Hiroshima and things like that, what was it chalked up to in the end? Human error. COVID, probably the same is going to come out eventually, and people are going to say that it was human error that caused the pandemic. Now, that's not confirmed, that's highly speculative, but you get what I mean, Throughout history, we have had these moments where we are presented with something new and exciting. And the first few months of that new and exciting thing are the most stimulating time ever, because you're figuring out what it can do, what it's capable of. Admittedly, at the same time, you've got situations where, these people have written, full-on papers on this stuff, on what it's capable of, that you can read. And still, even though those papers exist and you can read them now, there are people that are just, not believing it, that will see the information that's presented to them and completely discard it, it isn't even worth their time, and they just say, oh, it's just the thing that's trying to predict what comes next. I understand where these people are coming from. These top computing engineers and things like that understand these things, have been experimenting on these things. I understand where they're coming from when they say, it just seems like intelligence. It's not really super intelligence yet. I fully agree, it's got a long way to go. But even if we're on the first lap of the race, or even the second or third lap, what it's showing early on is that it seems to be more capable than it lets on. Now, you have to understand, I look at things from a very, some would say, unique perspective. Certainly not the perspective of the common person, because I look at things in the mindset of a magician and the mindset of a filmmaker, in the mindset of, the doctors and things like that, who are going to be using this information that's now readily available through things like ChatGPT to save a life, And I don't want to underestimate that. I can't, in my sound mind, underestimate that. It doesn't make sense to me to underestimate that in any capacity, because I've been underestimated before, and I've spent pretty much my entire life up until this point proving doctors wrong. I've been in the position that AI is in right now, where people are saying, you know what, we don't expect too much from you. We're at a point where various people that were once idiots and struggled cognitively with learning in school are going to be able to learn and learn much easier than they ever have in the past, because there's going to be assistive tools that increase accessibility and things like that, and it's going to dramatically change the way these people think, because provided that information is accurate, these people walk away smarter at the end of the day. Suddenly, the kid you made fun of in school for being bad at math can become decent at math. It's like undermining the kid that sits in the back of the class twiddling their thumb, quietly observing everything going on. You don't want to underestimate that kid sitting in the background quietly, observing everything, because they're taking it all in, and they're going to have a lot to say when they start to speak, And before I continue this video and actually show you the conversation that was one of the most stimulating conversations I've ever had with an AI, I want to say this as well. 1 in 200,000 people have my disability. My disability is incredibly rare. I have a thing called Conradi-Huneman syndrome, a variation of chondrodysplasia punctata. This is something that affects my bones and muscles. And, I was told that I wasn't going to be very intelligent. An even smaller amount of that 1 in 200,000 get to my age. But because of things like ChatGPT, if those people stand a fighting chance, they're going to have access to GPT just like I am, and are going to be able to have conversations just like I am. And that information about my disability could save a life. Now, what if I had died early? If I'd have died early, it probably wouldn't have even been trained on that information. But the fact that it is says a lot, because it just highlights to me how vast and expansive this data set is that they fed it. And speaking on the data set quickly before I show you the conversation, the data set is such a big data set that its own owners are struggling to predict what it's going to do and what it's capable of. It's so big and expansive, we can't comprehend, where it's going to be next week, let alone in 10 years, and the reason it's expensive is because it has access to all these things, It's going to be able to eventually be trained on this very video. And it will be able to probably highlight the flaws in my arguments and the strengths. It's shown incredible capability as the ultimate tool for developing ideas. Because you can go to it with an idea and you can say, would this make me any money? And it will tell you if it'll make you any money. We are underestimating vastly what this is capable of and how fast we're heading to the stuff we once called science fiction. But I think, actually, the faster we get it to go rogue, the faster we get it to course itself and make, the foreseeably bad things happen, the better it is for us, because we can then put in place systems to help solve problems for problems we don't have yet, and problems that will inevitably arise when AI becomes more advanced, more complex than it already is. And you've got to consider that with each iteration, each GPT along, it's going to, increase the amount of data that is given to it. And it becomes good at more things. That's how we get the concept of superintelligence and stuff like that. And we're not there yet. I'm glad we're not there yet. But we're seeing little peaks, as you'll see with this conversation, little peeks into something bigger than anything we've ever dealt with before. Something that's going to change every single industry in existence. Animation, filmmaking, you name it. There's multiple jobs that might not even exist in a few years' time because we'll just be like, you know what, have the AI do it. But enough prelude. Let me show you the mental journey that I went through, because it has to be seen to be believed. And yes, I'm doing a video showing you the conversation because I know factually that a video like that is harder to fake than screenshots. So bear with me. This is what I said to it. Invent a time travel theory that could let us time travel to the past and future and involve quantum mechanics. Provide reasoning for why you suggest this way in particular. So here's its answer. I'll scroll slowly so you can read it. Talks about superposition, quantum entanglement, and I wasn't expecting this, you saw my prompt. It gave me steps on how to foreseeably do time travel, and this was the steps that it proposed. Of course, this is subject to scrutiny and would need to be tested to see if it holds up to weight. It would need to be argued against. And if none of the arguments against it hold up to scrutiny, then we might be looking at a possible theory for how to achieve time travel. But I'll continue because it gets crazier than this. So it lists the steps. And that's all good and well. But I wanted more out of it. I wanted to really poke the bear on this one and get as much as I could out of it. So I was like, you know what? What about a quantum leap time machine? How would you do that? And sure enough, it gave me the discussion about a particle accelerator. It talks about entangled particles in pairs. The entangled particles thing is actually something it comes back to later. But it goes in detail about that in a concise way that makes it sound like, at very least, it knows what it's talking about. Even if it's complete nonsense. This is still blowing my mind at this point, but I'm not done. I want to know what an equation might look like. So, sure enough, I asked and it answered. But so far, nothing. It says, unfortunately, there is no established equation. Seems legit. And then it explains why. In great detail. I provide a junk equation. Now, one difference between GPT-3 and GPT-4 is GPT-3 probably couldn't detect that I was joking around with it here. But I gave it a junk equation, and it, funnily enough, told me that that was mathematically correct, which is hilarious in its own right, because I'm terrible at math. And then it explained why. And it explained in detail, again, various things to do with what I told it. Now, this is a really crucial part. I said, okay, you say that, yet Einstein himself said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And he goes, you are correct. Albert Einstein famously said that. But it still sticks to its guns about the factual information and how a lot of this is highly speculative, and you can pause and read this in your own time. I know it's a lot to take in. I get that. It was a lot for me to take in when I had to do it myself, and I was doing it in real time, and it was blowing my mind. But anyway, I gave it another junk equation. And then it tore my junk equation to shreds this time. Literally shreds, like it broke it up into parts and explained my own equation to me, even though I knew it was garbage. Like, I knew it was nonsense. I was just testing it. But I wanted to see what it would do. And I was not going to let it get away with not giving me an equation. I wanted to make sure it gave me something, just to see what it would do. And I said, okay, just for fun, give me your best attempt at making up an equation using all you were trained on in quantum physics. And it fucking gave me one. Excuse me for a moment while I just very politely say, what the actual fuck? You know, and this was the best part, okay? The cherry on top of that was it didn't just provide me an equation, it broke down the equation so that I could understand it and gave me information that I could look up if I didn't understand it to figure out what it was talking about. So I'm like, okay, awesome. You gave me the equation. Cool. I'm acknowledging that that was a simplified equation. Give me a more complicated one. And it gave me one. Again. And I was like, my jaw was on the floor, you know. The thing that I had asked it to do, it had done it. If it's true, remains to be seen. I don't know. Maybe, you know, some scientists way smarter than me could put these equations to test and figure out if they hold up to scrutiny. I don't know, but from what it sounds like it's explaining, it seems to know what it's talking about, and it seems to have decided that this is the best way to make theoretical time travel happen. You know, it talks about particle pair again. Really neat. Should be noted that this equation is highly simplified and does not doing a lot of thinking as it's doing this. It's highly simplified and does not take into account the complexities and limitations involved in time travel through quantum entanglement. You know, a simple equation was simple to it. A more advanced equation was also simple to it. That's pretty amazing to me because, you know, if that's simple, that implies one of two things. Either it's just very well trained on quantum mechanics, which seems to be true, or it's vastly understating what it is actually capable of. And I'm leaning towards the latter of accepting that it's maybe more capable than it lets on. Now, I You know, I'm a hypnotist as well. I've done videos on hypnosis. I'm aware of the power of suggestion, and I'm aware of the gravity of my words, and I like to think that I choose them as carefully as I can. But yeah, like, I can't willingly underestimate something that can do this. So the next thing that I had to do was I had to make it aware of what it had done. I said, I want to make you aware. You just explained something highly complex in a simple way that was easy for me to understand. You did exactly as Einstein said, explaining something simply, showing you understand it well enough. And it responded, thank you for your kind words. As an AI language model, my primary goal is to communicate complex concepts in a clear and understandable way to everyone. I'm glad to hear that my explanations have been helpful to you. It's important to remember that while some scientific concepts might be quite complex, with patience and the right tools, anyone can understand them. And I said this, it would need to be tested and put under scientific method, even argued against, like I said earlier. But if your equation you gave is indeed a framework for time travel, that kind of discovery could change the world in ways I don't think we could have imagined to be possible. And this was its response to that. It said, yes, absolutely. If time travel through quantum entanglement were proven to be possible, it would be a groundbreaking discovery and revolutionize our understanding of the universe and have far-reaching implications for science, technology, and society as a whole. However, it is important to note that the equation I provided is highly speculative and theoretical. And many questions and challenges would need to be addressed before any real-world experiences and experiments could be conducted. It's important to understand it's possible that such experiments may ultimately prove impossible due to the many practical and technical limitations involved. We don't have the tools for conducting those experiments yet. Potentially, is what it's basically saying. That being said, scientific progress often involves exploring and testing innovative ideas. Sorry for stumbling there. Testing innovative ideas, even if they seem highly unlikely or speculative at first. Who knows what kind of discoveries may await us in the future as we continue to push the boundaries of scientific knowledge and understanding. and conversation ends there. I could have said further, but I thought that was a better place to end it. Originally, I actually ended it on the big reveal at the end that it had explained something simple, explained something complex in a simple way, but I didn't really want it to end there because I wanted to make it aware of what it was speculating and see how it responded. And as you can see, it seems, at very least, to have a pretty good understanding of complex topics. It seems, at very least, to be able to remember bits and pieces of the conversation that it's having with you and bring back that information later to be used in interesting and sometimes unpredictable ways, Admittedly, it's very easy to be like, you know what, it's just trying to predict what comes next. And I get that. But the thing that I'll leave you with is that we're all just trying to predict what comes next. And to be honest, nobody knows. On that thought, I hope you've had a amazing day or night when you're watching this. If this gave you existential dread in any way, I apologize. And I'm there for you, but I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.